Why is he doing this? Is that a right decision? Is he trying to boost the American economy? Because that's kind of a narrative, right? And even if that's the narrative, even if people actually believe in that, that was good for American economy because you're going to be getting a lot of $1 billion from Venezuela. You don't have to pay for the oil anymore. It still doesn't justify the attack because it goes against the UN rules. Trump took the things in his own hands. He didn't have permission from anyone. Just like Bernie Sanders said that he wasn't allowed to do this, but he did it anyway. And you could listen to the speech from Trump from that was like a year ago. Trump is actually talking about this. It's like after the 2020 presidency, when Biden actually became the president, Trump lost his presidency. He was like, we were paying for the oil. And I was thinking, like, we could have actually controlled Venezuela and we could have taken the oil without even paying for it. So I don't know why we're doing this. So he kind of already feels bad. He kind of already felt bad for 2020, but they could have taken over Venezuela. So that tells you what this guy's motives were. Just like with Palestine, everybody knew the motives were to actually work on that project that they had in mind. But yeah, let's see. So according to Trump, he blames Nicolas Maduro for the arrival of hundreds of thousands of Venezuelan migrants in the USA. That is true. A lot of migrants are coming to the USA. But then Trump blames Maduro for that, and that's why he kidnapped the president. They're among close to 8 million Venezuelans estimated to have fled the country's economic crisis and repression since 2013. Well, that's not going to solve the problem because you're going to create more repression, I guess, right? Bombing the country, creating more repression. And I know a lot of people are actually protesting. They were protesting against Maduro, and they're happy that they got rid of the president. But at the same time, that's not going to solve anything. Just because people are happy doesn't mean that it will solve anything. Because who is going to control the government now? And they don't know what's happening with their resources. It was kind of like a sudden. It was kind of like a like a recency bias sort of happiness. They were just happy that they got rid of the dictator that they had, but they don't know what they're getting themselves into now. And we know who's getting in power now. We know US is in power, and the person that they're going to actually nominate to be the new president, like the prime minister of Venezuela, the lady, she was the one who was going to nominate Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, which is kind of crazy. So that tells you that she's a puppet, and that was already in plan. That's why she was saying that. So, without providing evidence, Trump has accused Maduro of emptying his prisons and insane asylums and forcing its inmates to migrate to the USA. So that is without evidence. He said that they are letting their inmates go to USA. Trump is also focused on fighting the influx of drugs, especially fentanyl and cocaine, into the US. And by the way, let me tell you something about this. Fentanyl is not made in Venezuela. Venezuela has nothing to do with fentanyl. Fentanyl is actually, it comes from India. I think it comes from India, and then it is made like the kitchen stuff is done in Mexico. Mexico is the country, and I'm not trying to take any shots on Mexico. Like, Mexico is a great country, but at the same time, Venezuela has nothing to do with it. And he has designated two Venezuelan criminal groups, uh, Tren de Aragua and Cartel de los Soles, as foreign terrorist organizations, and has alleged that the latter is led by Maduro himself. So basically saying that I don't know how much information about this. Again, he doesn't have any evidence, but even if it is true, that doesn't give you the right to actually attack the country. Analysts have pointed out that Cartel de los Soles is not a hierarchical group, but a term used to describe corrupt officials who have allowed cocaine to transit through Venezuela. Again, same thing about the drugs. The drugs are not made in Venezuela. Even cocaine doesn't actually directly come from Venezuela. Trump has also doubled the rewards for information leading to Maduro's capture and has announced that he would designate the Maduro government as an FTO. Maduro has vehemently denied being a cartel leader and has accused the U.S. of using his foreign drugs as an excuse to try to depose him and get his hands on Venezuela vast oil reserves. All right, not very surprising. It's done it many, many times. Did that thing with Palestine, did that thing with Iran, did that thing with many other countries, did that thing with Nigeria. How has US ramped up pressure on Venezuela? Okay, there's been a buildup of pressure on the Maduro's government since Trump began his second term in office last January. Obviously, there was a lot of pressure when Trump actually said that we should, instead of paying for the oil, we should actually take over Venezuela. That's on record, by the way. He said it last year, so I don't know. First, the Trump administration doubled the reward it offered for information leading to the capture of Maduro. In September, U.S. forces began targeting vessels it accused of carrying drugs from South America to the U.S. There's been more than 30 strikes of such vessels in the Caribbean and the Pacific since then, killing more than 110 people. The Trump administration argues that it involved in a non international armed conflict with the alleged drug traffickers, whom it accuses of conducting irregular warfare against the USA. But again, many legal experts say the strikes are not against lawful military targets. The first attack on 2nd of September has drawn particular scrutiny, as there was not one but two strikes with survivors of the first hit killed in the second. Okay. Mm, 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 mm. Uh, okay, here's the thing about Trump, right? When Trump says something, take it seriously because he would actually do that. I know he was saying something about Putin as well. Like, it wouldn't be smart for Putin to actually bomb this part of Ukraine. And I wouldn't be surprised if you actually saw some war with Russia. But that's kind of a crazy thing because Russia is very powerful. But here Trump says about Maduro, he's like, prior to Maduro's capture, Trump repeatedly said that Maduro is no friend of the USA and that it would be smart for him to go. So he says that, right? And just like Marco Rubio was saying that when anything comes out of the mouth of this guy, just take it very seriously. He also increased the financial pressure on Maduro by declaring a total naval blockade on all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. Oil is the main source of foreign revenue for the Maduro's government. The U.S. has also deployed a huge military force in the Caribbean whose stated aim is to stop the flow of fentanyl and cocaine to the USA. I don't know why we're talking about drugs when drugs are not actually made in Venezuela. No, fentanyl. Mexico is the biggest transporter of fentanyl. So if any country they should have attacked, and again, I'm not supporting that. I think Mexico is a great country, but that's everybody knows why they're going there. It's the oil. As well as targeting vessels they accuse of smuggling drugs, the forces also played a key role in the U.S. naval blockade. Okay, now we can actually find out. So I'm going to read the part where it says, is Venezuela actually flooding the US with drugs? We're going to find out. Venezuela is a relatively minor player in global drug trafficking, acting as a transit country through which drugs produced elsewhere are smuggled. So drugs are getting produced somewhere else. So drugs are getting produced in Mexico, and some of the parts of the drugs they are made in China, and some of the parts are actually made in India. Then they go to Mexico, and Mexico is like the final touches done in Mexico. Its neighbor Colombia is the world's largest producer of cocaine. So we're talking about cocaine. Yeah, it's Colombia. If we're talking about fentanyl, it's Mexico. But most of it thought to enter the U.S. by other routes, not via Venezuela. Just to be clear, according to U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration (DEA) report from 2020, almost three-quarters of the cocaine reaching the US is estimated to be trafficked via the Pacific, with just a small percentage coming via fast boats in the Caribbean. Okay, while most of the early strikes in the US has carried out were in the Caribbean, most recent ones have focused on the Pacific. So that kind of totally destroys the purpose, right? Because you're saying that we're attacking the transits of the drugs because the drugs are getting transported through this area, but they're saying the US has carried out were in the Caribbean, where recent ones have focused on the Pacific. So they've focused on the Pacific when we know that most of the drugs are actually not smuggled through the Pacific. So that tells you a lot about it. In September, Trump told us U.S. military leaders that the boats targeted are stacked up with bags of white powder, the mostly fentanyl and the drugs true. Fentanyl is a and has become the main drug. On December 15, Trump signed an executive order designating fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. So Trump is designating fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. Okay, I don't have a strong opinion about this. If he's thinking or if he's taking fentanyl as like a weapon of mass destruction, fentanyl is pretty bad, to be honest. The side effects are pretty bad, so I could see that happen. It was closer to a chemical weapon than a narcotic. However, fentanyl is produced mainly in Mexico and reaches the US almost exclusively via land through its own southern borders, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Fentanyl is actually produced in Mexico, and that's where it's smuggled through most of the times. Uh, Okay, and it's not like this is a news coming from somewhere else. This is a news from 2025 National Drug Threat Assessment. We're talking about the DEA assessment. So, if somebody's lying, it's DEA. Okay, so party is getting control of Kenya, including the National Assembly, much of the judiciary. Okay, as president was the leader who promised to win by hook or by crook. How big is the force the U.S. has deployed in the Caribbean? Mm. Okay, by the way, U.S. is spending a lot of money over there. The U.S. has deployed 15,000 troops and a range of aircraft carriers, guided missiles, destroyers, and amphibious assault ships to the Caribbean. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. So, U.S. helicopter reportedly took off from it before U.S. forces seized an oil tanker of Venezuela on 10th of December. So they've been doing that for a while. Used to transport section oil from Venezuela and Iran. Venezuela described the action as an act of international piracy. So since then, U.S. has targeted two more tankers and waters off Venezuela. So they've been taking oil off Venezuela for like a while now, without even paying for it. By the way, Trump said after Saturday strikes that the American Armada remains poised in position. Okay, so now we're gonna find out how much oil does Venezuela actually export and who buys it. So I know U.S. has been buying oil from Venezuela for a long, long time, and that's what Trump actually came out last year, and he was like, why the fuck are we paying for the oil when we can actually get control of the oil, right? Oh, just like I could do anything. So, mm, uh, it happened in the Tonga. Okay. U.S. officials have previously denied Venezuela's allegations that moves against Maduro's government were an attempt to secure access to the country's untapped reserves. Venezuela has the world's largest proven crude oil reserves and profits from the oil sector finance. So we're talking about the world's largest proven crude oil reserves. That's what we're talking about. Do you think that's just a coincidence? And however, its exports have been hit by sanctions and a lack of investment and mismanagement within Venezuela's state-run oil company. Of course, Venezuela is not a rich country. It's got a lot of oil. They probably don't have the technology to actually make use of the oil. So that's why there's a lot of sections in Venezuela. Venezuela produced only 0.8% of the global crude oil, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration (EIA). It currently exports about 900,000 barrels per day, and China is by far its biggest buyer. So China is the country that has been buying the most oil from Venezuela. So America is actually doing two things over here. First of all, they were probably threatened by China as well because China is getting a lot of oil from Venezuela. So once you take control of the oil, it means you're going to put extra sanctions on China to get the oil. First of all, so you're in a war with China at the same time, and I would say more like an economic war. And then you're getting the oil for free. Trump is a businessman, so we can see from the business point of view, that's the game that he's playing. I don't think it's a very smart move by Trump, you know. But he knows he's got one foot in the grave. He's already That's his last presidency. He's not gonna get it back in power. He's trying to distract people from Epstein files. That's why people think that he actually ran for the presidency. There was no other reason for him to become the president because he wanted to divert attention from Epstein files, and there were so many cases against him. Being a president is the only Becoming the president for the second time is the only way out for Donald Trump. That was the only way out in 2024. So that's what he went for. I'm actually going to put a poll on about this. Okay, guys, now we're going to discuss the Palestine issue. To be honest, everybody knows why US is in Palestine. They wanted to get gas from Palestine. And although they didn't directly say that, but everybody knows the motives behind it. So the US, Israel, and UAE have discussed using profits from Gaza's offshore gas supplies to help pay for the reconstruction of the destroyed enclave. One former Western official and a current Western and Arab official told a Middle East Eye. The discussions have taken various forms, but one includes the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company taking a stake in Gaza's undeveloped gas fields and those funds contributing to the reconstruction of Gaza, the sources told MW. And that's how everything is done. It's done in the name of good. So the name of good is that, oh, we have done a lot of destruction now, so we need to construct Gaza back, and that's where we're going to take over the gas and we're going to help them out. The talks are preliminary, and like much of the post-war planning for Gaza that the U.S. has spearheaded, even before a ceasefire was signed on October, no hard commitments have been made. The sources said. But the former Western official told MW that the idea of monetizing Gaza's gas for reconstruction surfaced in December. Gas was discovered in Gaza's marine field in 2000. Oh, I mean, that tells you how many attacks. How many attacks have USA, actually Israel, has carried out after 2000? A lot of them, especially after 2005. I mean, they've got the custody of Gaza since 2005, so that's been a long time. And they found the gas in 2000, so that tells you a lot about it. The rights to develop the gas are shared between the two entities: the Palestine Investment Forum, which is the Palestinian Authority's sovereign wealth fund, and the Consolidated Contractors Company, construction and energy conglomerate owned by a Palestinian diaspora family headquartered in Greece. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, Egypt had eyed taking a stake before the Hamas-led 7th of October 2003. This is what I don't understand. Like some of the other Muslim countries as well, it seems like they've got their eyes on Palestine too. Attack on southern Israel and the subsequent war in the enclave, which has been recognized as a genocide by the United Nations. An expert on so the cost to develop the gas field was estimated at 750 million. So the cost to develop the gas field was estimated to be 750 million, and that it would generate about 4 billion of the revenue, with annual profits of 100 million a year for 15 years, going to the Palestinian Authority. This is the Palestinian most valuable natural resource at the moment. Development of it would make a contribution to reconstruction. I mean, it's not a bad deal for them, to be honest. Like, if they're looking at it, there's a reason they're looking at it. It's estimated to be, the expenses are estimated to be 750 million, and it would generate 4 billion of revenue. So there's a lot of profit that they're actually making. 100 million a year for like 15 years straight. The US estimates the full cost of Gaza reconstruction is substantially higher, coming in at 70 billion. Just shouted, but Gaza has stalled because Arab and Muslim states richer. Trump's plan for an international force to deploy to Gaza has stalled because Arab and Muslim states, which are expected to contribute troops, are wary of being caught between Hamas, which has not disarmed, and Israel's soldiers entrenched in half of Gaza. But the current Western officials said discussions about monetizing gas resources were still progressing. Okay, the UAE has also shown interest in Eastern Mediterranean gas. ADNOC and BP walked out of talking 2 billion stake in Israel's newly Med Energy in 2024 amid the war in Gaza. New Med owns a 45% stake in Leviathan, Israel's biggest gas field, and 30% of Aphrodite, a field located off the coast of Cyprus. I mean, UAE is playing a role in a lot of wars at the moment. It seems like they wanted to get some benefit out of the Palestinian war too. It just seems like they wanted to get the gas project, but also that's not the only thing. What else are they doing? The war in Sudan. Qatar, who previously sent aid to the enclave in coordination with Israel and host Hamas leadership at the request of the US, said it will not fund Gaza's reconstruction. Oh, we're not the ones who are going to write the check to rebuild what others destroyed. Israel flatlined this land. Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman said in an interview at the Doha Forum in December. Wow. There's also been Saudi Arabia has also been non-committal. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman did not pledge any funds to Gaza in an Oval Office meeting in November with Trump. No one wants to stump up money for this reconstruction, the Western official said, but investing in natural source resources for a country like the UAE could be a way to do something. The Trump administration has already condensed much of its diplomacy in Ukraine and other war zones to a business transaction. Trump has also tied a peace deal between Rwanda and Congo to critical minerals. I mean, that I don't understand, to be honest. Anytime you start a war and then the war gets finished in like a few days, obviously because you dominated them, it's somehow considered like a peace deal. Obviously, they don't have a choice. When you're going to bomb the country and the country doesn't have the power to defend itself, they will come to an agreement to stop the war. So why is that given as a credit to USA when it should be given? It's a negative point because you're the one starting it, and then you leave them with no choice than to come to an agreement. I don't see that as a positive in any way. Okay. Okay. Okay, I don't know what's happening with Marco Rubio, by the way. He's saying that U.S. not at war with Venezuela, Rubio says, as Maduro held in New York jail. Uh, I mean, at one point, he was also saying that when Trump says something, you take him for his word because he actually means it, which I think when we all need to come to an agreement that he actually means it when he says it. Defense minister urges Venezuelans to restart their normal activities. What happens to Venezuela today could happen to any state or government. Says Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino is calling on people in Venezuela to start their normal activities in work, trade, and education. We brought you earlier, in which Pedrino says Maduro's capture saw a large part of Maduro's security team killed, along with innocent civilians. He also says that the army is supporting Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as acting leader of the country. Of course, they're going to support Delcy Rodriguez as acting leader of the country because the USA is paying for that. Innocent is killed in U.S. Operation Defense. Okay, by the way, we're gonna saw something else. How many countries has USA bombed last year? How many countries did they bomb in 2025? Just 1 year. Okay, this week, United States, and this is from Al Jazeera, by the way, so it might be a little biased, but I'll tell you the facts. This week, United States President Donald Trump confirmed that the USA had struck a docking facility in Venezuela, marking the first military action on South American country land since it began targeting Venezuela shipping in the Caribbean and East Pacific in September 2025. Uh, okay. Okay, Trump claims that he has ended 8 wars, right? Despite modeling himself as a president of peace deserving of a Nobel Prize, who he claims has ended 8 wars around the world this year. Trump's Venezuela strike was just the latest in a string of his administration's military attacks around the globe since its inauguration in January. Okay, so which countries has USA bombed this year? At the start of the second term in January 2025, Trump pledged to restore peace by ending global conflicts. His administration has since attacked at least seven countries, with Venezuela being the latest. Okay, so the countries that they bombed is Venezuela, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Nigeria, Yemen, and Somalia. So So this week, the U.S. confirmed one strike on a docking facility on Venezuelan territory as part of the Trump administration escalating war on boats, if it claims, are smuggling drugs from the country to the USA. Okay, the following that followed the U.S. Navy's seizure of two oil tankers of the Venezuelan coast earlier in December in an apparent attack to choke Maduro's main economic lifetime. Washington claims the vessels are part of a shadow fleet of tankers smuggling sanctioned oil. Since August, the U.S. has amassed the largest military presence in the Caribbean Sea in decades, causing alarm among governments there. The Trump administration claims that is warranted because the trafficking of drugs to the U.S. constitutes a national emergency. But multiple reports have shown that Venezuela is not a major source of drugs being transported across borders. On September 2, the U.S. began striking small ports in the Caribbean that it alleges were trafficking drugs. It is thought that it has struck more than 30 vessels since then. The Trump administration say the vessels are operated by Venezuelan terrorist organizations, including the Tren Aragua Group and the Colombian National Liberation Army. However, it has provided no evidence for this. First of all, they're doing this because they believe that the drugs were getting smuggled through the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. And and plus they're saying and they couldn't find any evidence for this. First of all, even if you have evidence for drugs getting smuggled, I think this is a bit of an extreme action to attack a country because of that. And you killed 120 people who were smuggling drugs, right? But there's not even any evidence of it. And we know for sure that Venezuela is not the biggest smuggler of the drugs. You talk about fentanyl, that's produced in Mexico. You talk about cocaine, that's produced in Colombia. At least 95 people have been killed in the boat strikes, Human Rights Watch revealed on December 16, accusing Washington of extrajudicial killings. In early December, U.S. lawmakers from both Republican and Democratic sides urged the Pentagon to release full footage of the first strike on September 2, which has proved even more controversial following revelations that the vessel was subject to a double tap attack. Two survivors of the first attack, clinging to debris in the water following a first strike, were killed in a follow up strike. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has said the footage will not be released. Oh, they're not releasing the footage. We're talking about September, the 1st of September, when they first attacked the ships. Um, Following a government change in Venezuela, Trump, meanwhile, has called Venezuela a narco state and said President Maduro days of number. So he told us in September that his days of number, and he also called it a narco state. He also said that he compares fentanyl to like the weapons of mass destruction. Well, if you're officially saying that it's comparable to the weapons of mass destruction in the policy, uh, I don't know. I don't know about this stance, to be honest. If that means invading the country, that's pretty bad. If you just think that they're as bad as like the weapons of mass destruction, if you just believe it, if you just keep it to yourself, I guess there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, then U.S. attacked Nigeria, and you know they did that on the Christmas day, and you know why they did that on the Christmas day, because Boko Haram's, which are Muslims, terrorist organization, is killing Christians in Nigeria. So the excuse would have been to save the Christians, and doing it on the Christmas day. What a great effort, right? Trying to convince the audience that we were actually doing it for Christianity. So on Christmas Day, the U.S. launched the first of what Trump said would be powerful and deadly strikes against groups Washington claims are affiliated with ISIS in northwest Nigeria's Sokoto state. And by the way, I'm not sure if the Boko Haram are getting they have any affiliations with ISIS. By the way, I'm not sure about it, but I know for sure that ISIS was getting provided weapons by Israel. We've gotten so much evidence of it. Like they've got the weapons of them. They have found evidence that it was from Israel, and Al Qaeda. Everybody knows that Al Qaeda had weapons from USA. This is like common knowledge. They found so many weapons from them that USA only USA makes. It followed weeks of diplomatic pressure on the Nigerian government, which Trump and senior conservative Republicans, including Ted Cruz, have accused of enabling a Christian genocide in a country. Of course, Ted Cruz is going to say that. You saw how Tucker was actually pressing him on the aid to APAC. He didn't have an answer to it. It was like, my opinion doesn't really matter. Bro, you are like a head of a. You're like a. You sit in the parliament. You're like a senior conservative Republican. So you do have a say in everything. Of course, your opinion matters. Country with population is very nearly even mix of Christians and Muslims. Nigeria has been plagued by violence from armed groups linked to Al Qaeda or ISIS. So we're not just talking about Boko Haram, we're talking about Al Qaeda, and we're also talking about ISIS in Nigeria, operating in the predominantly Muslim northeast and northwest regions. Abuja denies allegations of genocide and say Muslims and Christian communities alike are affected by the violence. So basically, the president or prime minister, whoever is the leader in Nigeria, they denied all of the allegations of the genocide, and they're saying that it's not just the Christian community that are getting attacked by it; it's a Muslim community. I'm not really sure about it. I need to check the stats on it. But obviously, if he's trying to save his ass, he's gonna say that. Furthermore, alleged attacks on Christian farmers in Nigeria have taken place in a completely different part of the country. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz first accused Nigeria's government of enabling a massacre against Christians in October 2025, citing a rising number of attacks against the community in the country's central middle belt region, which is separate from the violence in the north. Even though these two issues are separate, Abuja, under pressure, agreed to the U.S. military operation in the north of the country on December 25. Okay, that part I don't get. So I think what happened is there was a lot of pressure. They knew that America would have bombed the shit out of the country if it didn't agree to the attack. Maybe he was left with no choice, and that's why he agreed to it. Like you could see with Qatar, right? Israel, when they were about to bomb Qatar, they saw some of the Hamas guys from Hamas actually moving to Qatar, and they wanted to bomb them. They wanted to eliminate them, right? And then just the last second, they actually told the U.S. So U.S. wasn't informed in advance. They told U.S. last minute, and U.S. kind of under the pressure of Israel at the moment. I think because their weapon companies are selling the weapons to Israel, and there's very good diplomatic relationship, right? U.S. had to agree to it, and then the president of Qatar, he didn't have a choice. It seemed like he was just happy to be there. It seemed he accepted his face basically. He didn't press them. He said that it was kind of needed at that point, and I think that's what happened to the president of Nigeria. Like he didn't have a choice, so he agreed to the operation on 25th of December. Details of the strike are still emerging. The U.S. African Command said in a statement that multiple ISIS terrorists were killed in the ISIS camps, and Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that the strike was successful. But who is giving you those numbers? Who is giving you those stats? It's the people who actually carried out the operation, so they're not gonna. They can easily lie about this. It's not like you had any media coverage of the attack, so you would know what the numbers were or what people they actually unalived in that attack. You wouldn't know that unless you were there. It appeared to target a newly emerged La Kurawa group, which conflict monitors say is made up of armed fighters from Mali and Niger, who may be linked to ISIL or Al Qaeda. The group is known to operate in forested corridors between Sokoto and Kebbi states. At least one U.S. missile or debris hit Jobba Town in Sokoto. The Nigerian military, speaking to local media, later confirmed strikes on armed group hideouts in Buani Forest, but did not reveal casualty numbers. The U.S. and Nigeria have a long history of security collaboration through training and intelligence sharing, but the Christmas strikes mark the first known kinetic U.S. military action in Western African nation. It was timed, analysts say, to appease Trump's Christian supporters. That's what I've been talking about, as Washington double downs on a narrative of saving Nigerian Christians, although Nigerian authority insists that the strikes are not about any other religion, any one religion. Trump said more strikes will follow. He also said that more strikes will follow. And then we're going to talk a bit about Somalia. Somalia is another country that they bombed. That was right before Nigeria. The U.S. has long trained Somali forces and conducted airstrikes attacks in the region against armed groups, including Al Sahab, a group affiliated with Al Qaeda, which has launched several attacks in Somalia and in neighboring Kenya. They also target an ISIL offshoot known as ISIS Somalia. Al Shabaab, which is about 7,000 fighters, holds large swaths of land in south central Somalia, while the smaller ISIS Somalia, which is about 1,500 fighters, is active in the mountainous regions of autonomous Puntland in northern Somalia. In the past year, 7,289 people have been killed by the armed group activity, according to the US based Africa Center for Strategic Studies. In his first term as president, Trump withdrew most US troops from the country, but the Biden administration redeployed them in May 2022. So it's not even just a conservative thing; it's a USA thing. It doesn't matter which parties in power, whether you have Democrats or Republicans, they both follow the same policy. It's like they both are two sides of the same coin. They're getting controlled by the same power. In Trump's second term, the U.S. has remained active in the country, as Somalia's urging Washington has dramatically intensified air attacks since February, according to the New America Foundation. Overall, at least 111 strikes have been recorded this year, surpassing the number carried out under the George Bush, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden administrations combined. So, I mean, they've been doing that for a long, long time. But in Trump's administration, the new one, the number of strikes has actually surpassed the strikes done during George Bush, or we're talking about Barack Obama or Joe Biden. And there'll be many casualties, not just the military casualties, but also the civilian casualties in that attack. Civilians have been killed in the Somali attacks. Investigative side, drop side news revealed in December. At least 11 civilians, seven of them children, were killed in a strike in Lower Juba region, Somalia southwest. Just last month, the US does not reveal the number of the civilians' deaths in Somalia. Mm, and then we're talking about Syria. So, US strikes on 70 ISIL positions in Syria on December 19 were carried out in retaliation for a shooting in Palmyra, which killed the two US soldiers and a civilian interpreter a week earlier. Three other Americans and two members of the Syrian security forces were injured in the shooting. No group had claimed responsibility for the attack, but Trump placed the blame on ISIL. Syria's Minister of Interior Affairs later said an individual who targeted the US troops had been a member of the state security service, slated for a dismissal for hardline reviews. The US retaliatory operation, dubbed Hawkeye, in a reference to Iowa, the Hockey state, where both killed soldiers were from, damaged several ISIL weapons storage facilities and locations across Syria. An official told CNN, I am hereby announcing that the United Nations is inflicting very serious retaliation. Just as I promised on the murderous terrorists responsible. Trump posted on Truth Social on December 19, we are striking very strongly against ISIL strongholds in Syria, a place soaked in blood which has many problems, but one that has a bright future. If ISIS can be eradicated, he added, warning against further attacks on U.S. Service members. Hex said in a post on X on the same day that the strikes represented a declaration of vengeance on ISIL. U.S. troops have been stationed in Syria to target ISIL, which once controlled large areas of land across Syria and Iraq in the mid 2010s. Look at the double standards, by the way. Now, Trump is actually attacking Syria. We know that he did that. But when he was not the president, when Biden was the president, this is what's coming out of his mouth. He's saying, at the time, Trump, as the president-elect, warned against U.S. interference. He posted on Truth said, Syria is a mess. when he newly became the president, I would say, but it's not our friend. And the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. So this was the claims that Trump was making when he just became the president, or when he was not the president. But what's happening right now is a completely different story. Fewer than 1,000 troops remain in Syria by April, according to the Pentagon. Um, I think I'm gonna get off the stream for a while, but I'll be back soon, and then we'll be discussing something else.